welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's season number 2. We're coming back at you. Yes, we decided to run it back for the 2022 season. We're coming at you each and every week with our previews of which games to watch, kind of breaking those games down. If you're a betting person, maybe give you a few tips along the way. Take it for what it's worth. Take it, leave it, whatever you want to do with it. But the man that I could never do this without, my co-host, Fresh, it's time to start talking actual football.
Haps, it is week 1, dude. We have finally made it. We've made it through the summer. We've made it through the off season, through spring practice, through the draft, boring long summer months of whatever. We are here. It is week 1. Let's kick it off. Let's go.
It's an exciting time because I was in a conversation just a little while ago. The conversation just turned into, well, who's going to realign again? Who's going to change? I finally said, I'm tired of talking about this. I'm ready to start talking about some of these teams. We've been doing our research. If you guys didn't pay attention, we went from 25-1. Fresh, you've been breaking down every single conference that's out there over on spinablesports.com. We're ready to go for week 1. And week 1's not bad. Usually you're looking at week 1, you might get 1-2 matchup games. There's some really good football. There's some really good football that's going to be let off this year. It's not a bunch of guys just playing cupcakes. So let's just jump right into it. Fresh, what's the very first game that you want to talk about this season?
Well, I think we're going to look at a team that played in the playoff last year. That's the Cincinnati Bearcats going down to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and taking on Sam Pittman and the Hogs. This, I think, is even bigger than going Notre Dame last year and winning, because that team last year for Cincinnati was stacked. It was loaded. You had the Thorpe Award winner, and then you had Sauce Gardner, the top 5 pick. The 2 different guys there at corner. You had Pierce at receiver, Jerome Ford at running back, Ritter at quarterback, a host of other players along that squad on both sides of the ball. Like, that team was stacked, and they were prepared for that trip to South Bend in that matchup. This year, those guys that I just listed, they're gone. And now you're going down on the road to Fayetteville to open up. You don't have a game to sort of get your feet wet to start the season. There's no preseason games like there is in the NFL. Like, this is the kind of chance, like, you got 2 quarterbacks who really haven't played, and which one is ready to go? You first thing to look at, you got Bryant and Prater, the 2 quarterbacks. Which one is going to be able to step in and replace, Ritter? Ritter was a fantastic quarterback, probably the greatest quarterback in Bearcat history. Now you have to go in and step in behind his shoes. You've got to find receivers. You've got to find a running back to help build that offense around. They do return all 5 offensive linemen and both the starting tight ends. So you have that line of scrimmage game who has competed against Georgia 2 years ago, played against Alabama in the playoff last year. We just beat Notre Dame. They've been tested. They have that ability. But what's the skill players and how they're going to click in on the road as their first, really career start. Defensively, you return a bunch of players. You are missing your 2 corners there and a couple pass rushers. The overall experience and the depth of this team is coming back. Are they ready to take that next step and supplant themselves as a solid program? And actually, in this last year of being in the AAC and moving to the Big 12 next year, I think that kind of a bridge gap this year, I don't really see them as winning the conference. I think that's probably going to go to Houston, but they're going to be in competition, for that league title across all the year. But this year, this Arkansas game is going to be big for them. On the other side of the ball, was it just Traylon Burks last year? Was he the only guy that really, he's the only straw that stirred the drink? KJ Jefferson's back. It took him a little, kind of got comfortable as the year was going on, kind of built momentum as they moved along. The defense is gutted, only bringing back 4 guys, but they are bringing back big-time safety Jalen Catalon. So he should be, help to build that secondary in that kind of 5 defensive back look that they've been really building out there to help drop a guy into the box, really help play around, along with slot receivers and getting running backs out of the backfield. A unique approach there. How can KJ take it to the next step? Last year, it was Burks and a bunch of other guys, but he really did a lot with his arm and with his feet. How will he be able to spread the ball around, get the other playmakers in? They do bring back their entire offensive line as well. So we're going to have the Hog Mileys up front are going to be veteran players on both sides of the sideline. So which of those offensive lines can dictate early on? I got a feeling they're going to run the ball early, sort of test it out, get a good lather going, and then see what passing opportunities come from there and how KJ Jefferson and which quarterbacks for Cincinnati really develop as well. Looking at the receivers per spot, for the Razorbacks, you lose Burks. You bring in Hazelwood from Oklahoma, transferred in. He was a big 5-star recruit. He went to Oklahoma, didn't really play much there on that depth chart. Is he going to be able to keep that mentality and be the leader of this Razorback offense from a receiving perspective? We'll find that out as well. Arkansas last year had 4 losses. One was to Alabama, one was to Georgia, one was the SEC champion, one was the national champion. That's two losses that, you know what, you can deal with, even though they got beat pretty heavily in both of them. The other loss, they played Ole Miss. They went to overtime. They was tied. They scored a touchdown. They went for two. And you know what? I applaud them for going to it. They didn't get it. You lose kind of a fight, a great game right there. One team finished 9-4. One team went to a New Year's Six Bowl. Kind of finished out that way. The one loss, though, that they kind of stubbed their toe was Auburn. Auburn was not a very good football team last year, and you went down there and you lost that game. Like that, those kind of losses are what separate you from being an elite team in a conference and being a good team. Arkansas's got to avoid those stub the toe games this year, and that's a mentality they have to have. But they can't get there if they don't take care of business for Cincinnati. I think this is going to be a very defensive-minded football game. Coach Fickle is very focused on that side of the ball, if you're well aware. I think this is going to be a knock it out, draw it out, run the football, control the clock. It's going to be real hot. It's going to be a 2:30 kick there in Fayetteville, warm. When the dust settles, I think Arkansas wins 24-20, but it's going to be a very tight game all the way through the end of the fourth quarter.
So you would take Cincinnati on the points. So Cincinnati is currently a six-point underdog. So you take Cincinnati on the points right now.
Yep.
I think you're spot on here, Fresh. And the number one thing I looked at when I kind of did my notes on this game, I noticed that Cincinnati is returning all 5 of their offensive linemen. That's huge, especially when you're breaking in a new quarterback, when you're breaking in skill position players. You need those guys up front to give that quarterback an extra second. You need that hole to open up for just a half a second more to slip that running back through. I'm interested to see this game. Luke Fickell is slowly proving himself to be one of the best coaches in college football. If Cincinnati wasn't going to the Big 12, I think Luke Fickell is going to be on a lot of people's short lists, especially in the SEC and the Big 10. I think he's more of a Big 10 guy than anything else. But I really, really do think that Luke Fickell is one of the best coaches out there in college football right now.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, the way he's been able to build the program, I think his time at Ohio State when he had to be the interim coach for that 1 year, he learned a lot about himself, a lot about his style. Some jobs, they can be a little overbearing. Ohio State's one of those where you've got to be ready to handle all of the pressure. It's not just coaching on the field. I think he learned a lot that way, took that to Cincinnati, and has put his footprint in that part of the state where football in high school is huge, and be able to lock it down, keep a lot of guys home, and build a program at his own liking and his own image. They're only going to be continue to be contending in top 25s for a long time to come.
And I'm going to pick Arkansas. I'm with you. I'm taking Cincinnati in the points. I really like the idea. I'm just going to say it's going to be a little more high scoring than that. I'm going to go 31-28. Arkansas is going to win. It's going to take a drive at the end of the fourth quarter for Arkansas to put Cincinnati away. I'm not going to be shocked on Sunday morning if we wake up and Cincinnati has pulled off this upset. Yeah, the night games are going to be quick, fast, and in a hurry. You're going to need multiple TVs for that. Let's jump to our second game of the week, and we put this out on Twitter. Fresh and I, we went through the week 1 opening slate, and we put this out to our 15,000 followers out there on Twitter, and we said, which game outside of the Georgia-Oregon game and the Ohio State-Notre Dame game, which game are you most excited to see? 40% of the vote comes in at Florida State versus LSU. So the fan vote is choosing Florida State LSU. This is a neutral site game, which can we please stop that for a second, because a neutral site game in New Orleans, just like we'll get to it later, Georgia and Oregon playing a neutral site game in Atlanta. These aren't neutral site games here, folks. I don't know what to make of Florida State here, because really Florida State was a tale of two teams last year. Is Mike Norvell on the hot seat? And I really think he is. This team, this Florida State team, the whole offense cannot be the Jordan Travis show. They have to find something other than him to be everything that they're going to move the football up and down the field. Norvell really likes to run the football. He's going to need that offensive line to be so much better than last year, because last year Jordan Travis wasn't just running in an RPO situation or a quarterback draw situation. Dude was running for his life because he's facing a pass rush up the middle and out on the sides all the time last year. He's got to be better. He's going to have to rely on a little bit of Trayshawn Ward. Trayshawn Ward's got to take a little bit of pressure off of Travis. If he doesn't, you're going to see this game get ugly real quick, real fast here. FSU, though, the thing that shocked me, FSU last year recorded 33 sacks. And Michigan, who everyone loved their defense and loved their pass rush, had 34 sacks on the season. So FSU was able to get after the quarterback last year. If they're going to be successful in this game, that's what they're going to have to do on defense. They are going to have to make life uncomfortable for Brian Kelly and that Tiger offense. So let's go over to them. Redshirt sophomore. I'm watching this kid here. Derek McClendon II. I'm watching him for Florida State. Is he able to get to the quarterback in this game here? You must get home. You must create third and long situations for the Tigers. For LSU, we're starting the Brian Kelly era. What is this going to look like? LSU last year, 6-7. Brand new start with Brian Kelly as a head coach. Brian Kelly coming down from Notre Dame, if you didn't already know. Most interesting thing to me is the high level of expectations that's already being put onto LSU. The question is, Brian Kelly, are you ready to compete for a national title? And that's the name of the game at LSU. That's the name of the game. You do not go to a program like Baton Rouge and expect to just be second or third in the SEC. You're expected to go toe-to-toe with Alabama, competing for the SEC West crown. I know at the time of record, Brian Kelly is kind of playing coy. Who's he going to start over at quarterback? Both of us are talking about Arizona State transfer Jaden Daniels. He looks like he's going to be the expected starter. He has got one heck of a wide receiver, probably maybe one of the best. It's him or JSN, and then Addison over there at USC is Keyshawn Boutte. He's a matchup nightmare. Absolute matchup nightmare. Played in only 6 games last year and was still 4th in the SEC with touchdowns, with 9. This kid is going to make life very easy for Daniels. If FSU is going to want to have any shot in this game, like I said, they have to make sure they limit this passing attack. They have to get home to Daniels. They have to fluster him. We saw Daniels sometimes over at Arizona State. We watched a couple of Arizona State games last year. He's got some athleticism. He's got some movement with his legs. He's got a little bit of wiggle. He does throw a decent ball. He's not the greatest passer in the world, but he is very, very talented athletically. Is there enough for LSU to really put the points on the board? Because I'm looking at this and I'm saying LSU, if you get to 28, this game's over. I would almost say 24, but I'm going to confidently say 28. If LSU gets to 28, it's over for Florida State. I look at LSU. LSU has more talented names. LSU has higher rated prospects than Notre Dame did. But Notre Dame had a better defense last year. How much of that was Marcus Freeman? I don't know. Is that Brian Kelly going to bring down a system they trained up to Marcus Freeman? Maybe. But Kelly should really improve this Tiger defense. LSU allowed 137 yards per game on the ground. They need to fix that. They're getting back defensive end Ali Gay. He returns, had a great 2020, missed all of last season, was out for the year. He should be a huge addition to that defensive Tiger line on the Tigers. Also, one name to watch out for, Jaquelin Ray, defensive tackle. Monster in the middle right there is going to make time very, very difficult for Jordan Travis. I like LSU in this game because they have the athletes. They have the ability to pressure the quarterback. I need to see something from FSU. Mike Norvell, this is a game you win. You win this game, and you might have bought yourself the whole year. You lose this game, and let's start turning that temperature up on that seat a little bit more. And you're going to have more of those conversations about Deion Sanders being the next head coach of Florida State. I don't know, Tallahassee. I don't know about you. LSU is currently sitting at a 3-point favorite, which kind of shocked me that it was that low. I'm taking LSU and the points. I think LSU's win this game by a touchdown.
Well, first off, you look at it, I wrote about it in my ACC conference spotlight about Florida State. Really, but one of my four teams I'm watching, 7-6 was their best record since in a year since 2017. That standard is unacceptable at Florida State. There's the players who played there late 80s, 90s, 2000s, they've got to be embarrassed how far this program has fallen. I mean, it's terrible. There's no swagger. There's no fear. Beforehand, no one wanted to go to Doak Campbell. They owned the ACC. It was a gimme. They were winning 11 games a year, and they were doing it not just 24-12. They were doing it 50-12. The offense has no firepower, no teeth to it. The defense, Florida State athletes, defense. I remember in the 90s, you had Miami, Florida State. Their defenses were just lights out. You don't have that fear. You know you can score on them. The program itself has lost its heart. And I mean, it's not the coach because you had, when Jimbo left, you brought in another guy. He didn't do it. Everyone thought he was supposed to be the guy. He was a Florida State dude. Nothing happened. Norvell comes in. You've seen nothing. This is year 3, and the way that with realignment going on and landscapes changing and other teams in the ACC getting better, you've got to make a statement, and there's no better way to do it than this opportunity right here versus LSU. Last year, you opened up at home versus Notre Dame. You had to put on a backup quarterback who has come off multiple leg surgeries to revitalize that team in the fourth quarter, and you still couldn't get it done. You have your chance again. If you can't get it done, the season's only going to get tougher from here. Travis's athletic ability is fantastic. He can do it. I don't know if they have receivers or true running backs or even a true offensive line that can actually help stabilize that offense. I'm really worried about where Florida State is right now. And you talked about those 33 sacks. Jermaine Johnson, the third, who got drafted by the New York Jets, had 11 of those. So now you're having to make up a 30 sacks off of one guy. Where's this going to come from? Where's it at in Tallahassee? I have no idea. This is going to be a true test of that program. Year 3, you usually say that's where you want, hey, give me 3 years, see where my program's at. Well, this is year 3. Norvell, it's on you. On the other side, Brian Kelly, the reason you said you came to LSU was to win a national championship and to beat Alabama. Well, to set the tone, you've got to win in New Orleans. Great LSU teams have played in major, major games in the Dome there, and 9 out of 10 times they come out with the title. This is your introduction. I know it's not Tiger Stadium, but there's going to be a lot of purple and gold in that building and a lot of partying on Bourbon Street. You've got to put on the show on the field. You've got to have that team ready to play. Ed Orgeron and that 2019 national championship team, he was just there as a spokesperson. That team had so much talent, they didn't need him. They just needed him to get out of the way. You saw in 2020 and 2021 when he had to be there and be the rock for that foundation, and the talent maybe was not as elite as it was in 2019. The team looked to him and he let them down. You now are that rock, Brian Kelly. This isn't Notre Dame where you can pick the Sisters of the Poor and other schools to play whenever you want. You have got a gauntlet of a schedule, and when you look at it, this Florida State game is kind of one of the easier games on your set list. So you've got to figure it out. I'm not even truly high on Jaden Daniels at quarterback. Nussmeier is the other guy. I think they still have an issue there. You got to figure out what they got. Offensive line, they had some decent players last year. Running backs, they're always going to have some scat backs, and they're going to have athletes to receiver, but Keishawn Boutte is the answer on that offense. If you do look at Notre Dame offenses and try to replicate and see what you're going to get there in Baton Rouge, the tight end is a big playmaker in the running game and a mobile quarterback. Every time, he does not have pocket passers at Notre Dame. He has guys who have at least a little bit to get on the edge, running backs who can be able to hit the gap and go, and tight ends who are big playmakers. Expect to see a lot of that while they move Boutte around and try to find him in open situations, whether it's on the edge, X, Y, or Z spot, and giving him creative opportunities in the offense. Defensively, LSU is always going to have defensive players. They're going to have studs walking on and playing for them. I think it's organization and getting a different message on that side of the football for that team. There's a lot of pride, and all the alumni pride to come back to Baton Rouge, and they talk to them Tiger players that, hey, you need to uphold that standard. Very similar to Florida State, Miami. You see those kind of schools where the alumni come back and say, you need to be here. We're not hearing it right now in Tallahassee. We hear it every once in a while in Miami, and we hear it a lot in LSU. Are you able to play to that standard and be able to be elite again? I'm not doubting there's any talent on the defensive side of the football there in Baton Rouge. I think this is going to be an awakening from last year's pain for the Tigers. They're going to come in this game and try to unleash some demons. Will it equate a 10-win season? I don't know, but I think they take care of business and they put a beat down in front of the fans there in New Orleans. They win 34-10, and they just take care of the Knowles in a ugly fashion. And Mike Norvell should just start looking at cleaning out his office and updating his resume because it's going to be a bad slide from there.
All right, Fresh, where are we going next?
We're going to Atlanta where the players play. The defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs taking on the Oregon Ducks Saturday afternoon from the Mercedes-Benz Dome. This is actually a lot of storylines in play here. You have Dan Lanning. Last game he coached, he was on the side defensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs. Now he's the head coach in Oregon. He knows all his defensive players are still on staff. Will Muschamp knows how he coaches as well. Kirby knows, so they're going to have kind of that little battle going on as well as the players and how they know in practice what they did, and he knows tendencies and etc. Funny part, though, on the other side, Brian McClendon, former Georgia football player, former Georgia coach, and actually the last head coach at Georgia to get a victory between Mark Richt and Kirby Smart. He won the bowl game when he was interim head coach during the transition. He was receivers coach at Oregon the past 2 years. He's now coach at Georgia. So he knows some of those players at Oregon and how they have tendencies. So you kind of have that cat and mouse game going into this one. Oregon gets a transfer. Bo Nix, another guy very familiar with the Georgia Bulldogs. Bo Nix at Auburn, 0-3 versus the Dogs, threw about 700 yards in those games combined, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. His team's scored maybe 30 points in those 3 games combined, 14 of them coming his freshman year when they were down 21-0. He scored them 14 in that fourth quarter. So his experiences versus the Georgia defense, not exactly fantastic from a stance perspective. He was not sacked 9 times collectively in those 3 games. How is he going to perform as an Oregon Duck? Is he going to have a little more freedom in the offense? Is he going to have more playmakers around him? Is Dan Lanning, knowing that Georgia defense, going to help him be more successful? Be very interesting there in a new spot. I actually think over the course of the year, Bo Nix will actually play better because he won't have that burden of being an Auburn generational player where his dad also played quarterback there as well. Won't have that hanging over his shoulders as being the next big thing. So he might actually play better with a little more relief. Interesting to watch how that's going to play out. A lot of new players going to get a lot of playing time significantly for the Georgia Bulldogs on both sides of the football. If you didn't watch the NFL draft, 15 guys were drafted. A lot were taken, especially on the defensive side of football. Now it's time for those 4- and 5-star recruits who have been in the past few years who've been maybe role players getting partial playing time. Now they're thrust into the spotlight. They are the starters. Where's Small Mondin going to go? Where's Starks going to go? How are these defensive backs that have been coming in on the recruiting trail the past couple of years going to play? Is Robert Beal going to be able to continue to maintain? Nolan Smith, another veteran defensive lineman, defensive edge, linebacker, edge rusher. How's he going to be able to keep moving on with some of those losses? Jalen Carter, defensive tackle. He doesn't have Wyatt and Davis there anymore. How's he going to be able to uphold that defensive middle? A lot of questions to be asked on the defense, but we'll soon find out about them very quickly. But there's a lot of talent there they've recruited over the past few years. Offensively, does have the veterans actually coming back. A bunch of offensive linemen. They did lose their top 2 running backs, but I think McIntyre and Milton, Edwards, and then freshman the 4 running backs, they will find a way to keep that machine moving, and they'll keep generating yards like they have been the past 6, 7, 10 years. Receivers, A.D. Mitchell caught the touchdown there. Brock Bowers at tight end. Washington at tight end. Gilbert at tight end. Oscar Delp, the freshman, at tight end. You got Dominic Blaylock, comeback receiver. The offensive playmakers are there for this football team. It's now Stetson Bennett. Do you have the pressure off your shoulders? Can you be a little more explosive in that offense? You played very, very well. You've had your completion percentage. You've scored touchdowns. You look at stats. He's up there with everybody else. Now the keys are really him. He has that pressure off his shoulders of winning the title. I want to see how he does with a little more freedom in the offense and maybe getting a little more, high voltage. But Georgia and the Ants can be what they are. They're going to run the football, play action, tight ends, use the play action down the field if they have to. You kind of don't want to get caught up in the moment, though. Last year, Oregon went to Ohio State. Everybody thought, hey, Buckeyes are going to whoop them up. They don't have a quarterback, Anthony Brown, and Thibodeau's not playing. School didn't even play in that game. There's no way. What happened? Oregon played great defense. They got a lead. They held on. They ran the football, and they won the football game in the horseshoe. Huge road win. If you're Georgia, you've got to be aware of that. This football team have an offensive lineman. They were built in Mario Cristobal's image back in the day. Offensive lineman, run the football, be physical. They're going to come out in this game, and they're going to run the ball in Georgia. They're going to run the ball, try to use Bo Nix's legs on the edge, and be a little explosive, hit a play action 2 down the field. You've got to be able to handle the momentum. You are not the last year's over. The national championship season's over. You've got to focus on 2022 and don't think about the past and don't get caught up in that. I think this game will start out slow. Both teams trying to figure each other out. We don't have preseason, but as the game wears on, like in most cases, Georgia will then wear down the opponent and find a way to win this football game by 31-13 final. But it'll be an exciting game to see what mountain Georgia Bulldogs have coming out and what tricks does Dan Lanning have for that Oregon Ducks defense and that team as a whole coming into this big game.
31-13. It's only exciting to Georgia fans, my man. I don't know how I'll be honest with you. If I see a 31-13 game going on, I'll be flipping off to one of the other channels there real quick.
At the Tennessee Georgia game, and that was a 41-14 final. So early in the second half, they will pull away.
Georgia's coming off this national title here, and what do you do for a follow-up thing? Because the hardest thing, we rarely see it in college football, is a repeat. With how much you look at how much Georgia lost in NFL talent. I know Georgia's had a top 10 recruiting class for the last 3 or 4 years. I want to say maybe they've been top 7 and top 5. Top 5, okay. No matter what, are you able to coach up and replace players when you lose them to the NFL? That's the next spot that you really have to be a difference maker for Georgia. With this game here, are you too high on yourself already? Do you feel like, hey, we're the national champs. We're going to walk in here and expect Oregon just to roll over and let's win this game? That's not going to happen with Oregon. Oregon's going to show up in this game with the upset in mind. They are going to go after Georgia very quickly. Here's the thing with the Ducks. This is the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause. We talked in our first game there about Cincinnati and Arkansas both returning their front 5 there in that offensive line. Oregon has a very good offensive line. They return all 5 starters. Same thing like we were talking about with Cincinnati, that they have to put in the new skill position players. Say what you will about Bo Nix. I'm not a huge fan of him, but we know that he's all right. He has experience in these situations. Noah Sewell, the linebacker out there in Oregon, he's going to have something to say about this as well. In the end, it's going to come down to Georgia running the football. Georgia's going to run the football. You know that they're going to wear down the defensive line for the Ducks. I know everyone's going to say Dan Lanning has the secrets. He's going to be able to attack the Georgia defense. He's going to be able to do this. We're getting all of the secrets in for this. That's what Oregon fans have said all along. I think Oregon needs a little more respect on their name. I don't think that this is not them showing up and being just a team that's just paid to show up. This isn't Duke showing up to play Alabama in the Chick-fil-A kickoff class here. It is a very, very solid team. They've also recruited very well over the years. The cupboard's not bare over there. In the end, though, I'm saying Georgia will win this football game. They're going to pull away in the fourth quarter. I'm not going to go as heavy as you, Fresh. I'm not going to go a 31-13 drubbing there. But I am going to say that Georgia's going to win this game by 2 touchdowns in the end. If I'm a bet man, this spread is at 17.5 right now. This game's at 17.5. For me, just because I know that this game, I have a feeling that this game is going to be very slow paced. I think this is going to be a lot of long, drawn out drives. I would take the points with the Ducks. I'm looking at this as a 14-point Georgia win. I'll actually give Georgia, I think they're going to score more points than 31. I'm going to say 35, 21, 24 is going to be me, where I'll say this. I think the Ducks are going to get 3 touchdowns on the Dogs right there. But again, like I said, it's going to be at least a double-digit win for Georgia, but it won't be over until the fourth quarter.
So, Haps, what's your next game?
All right, I think this is the game that probably has the most intrigue. Utah, the Utes, traveling to Gainesville. The Gators, a 2-point dog right now in the swamp in August at night. That tells me Vegas really likes this Utah team. Vegas really, really likes this Utah team. I don't know. I don't know if it's just being close to the desert. I don't know if they watched the Rose Bowl like everyone else and saw this really high-powered offense. I don't know. This is a huge test for Utah. This is going to be an opportunity for Utah to become the story of college football going into this season. If Utah is able to go to Gainesville and knock off the Gators, because I know like Vegas is saying that the Utah is the favorite here, but really, if you get like a moment of truth from most people, I don't think most people are going to say, yeah, Florida's going to win that game. Like, I don't think a lot of people are going to actually give Utah credit until they win a game like this. Cameron Rising, we saw what he did. He comes back. He is the starter going into this year. He has a great running back behind him in Thomas. I'm real excited about him. They also have Dalton Kincaid, tight end. We talk a lot about Michael Mayer. We talk about Brock Bowers. We talk about the kid out in Iowa right now. This kid, Kincaid, is a step below the elite tight ends right there. He might cause the Gators a little bit of trouble. You look at Florida right now. Billy Napier coming over there. Billy Napier has a lot of success, but it hasn't been at that high level. Florida is dipping into a other group conference instead of maybe hiring a Matt Campbell or Luke Fickell like we've talked about. They're taking a risk here right now. These risks usually take a year or two to pay off. He does have Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is no longer splitting time with Emory Jones. Jones is gone. Can Richardson improve on as a passer? Richardson last year primarily used his feet to cause problems for offenses right there, but he really struggled to throw the ball at times. If he struggles, if Richardson still struggles to throw the ball, Ohio State transfer Jack Miller, redshirt freshman, is waiting there in the wings. Being an Ohio State fan, I've seen this song and dance before. I saw Miller in those spring games, throws a really nice ball. He's a little more traditional, not the same type of quarterback that you get out of Richardson. We saw the story again with Joe Burrow transferring from Ohio State, spending a couple years learning under Ryan Day out there and making his way over there in LSU. Just like you said earlier, Ed Orgeron was kind of the voice in the room, and the players just played because they were talented. Burrow learned a lot over there at Ohio State. That kid Jack Miller's a talented kid, and he's really, really, really impressive at times. Is he ready to start in a place like Florida? I don't know. Is he ready to start against a team like Utah? I don't know. Utah's defense. We know Kyle Whittingham is going to be a very good defensive coach. He is going to have those guys ready to play. Utah is a great defensive school, very similar to the mold of Wisconsin. They constantly produce good defensive players. Clark Phillip III, sophomore cornerback for Utah, that's the big matchup. Does Florida stay away from him? If you watch Florida, they're going to they need to run the football. If Richardson can get going, Naquan Wright can get going, you can soften up that Utah defense. You're going to have to eventually throw the ball. Is it going to be like Alabama where you stay completely away from Gardner's side in that college football game and only attack the other side of the field? Are you going to stay away from Clark Phillips? Maybe. I would love to see him ball out right here. I don't know how many opportunities because he's a really good cornerback over there. For me, Florida's got to be better offensively. They have talent on defense. Their incoming class isn't that great, but Dan Mullen did recruit pretty well in the years prior, so there is talent over there. In the end, I think Utah is going to be the feel-good story of college football this year. I think that week 6 or 7 game, whatever that week 6 or 7 game against USC, I think we start getting the train rolling for that game, man. And I think that this game right here, Utah going into the Swamp, winning by a touchdown, if not maybe more, against the Gators, they become the talk of college football.
Well, first off, folks, we do record this in Florida, and we are in Jacksonville, so not too far from Hogtown down there where the Gators play. But when we say it's hot and humid in
Brutal
August,
right now.
it's 88 degrees outside at 10 o'clock at night, and you open the door and you're already sweating. It is disgusting. That home field advantage that Florida has. That's a 7 o'clock kick. Sun's still going to be somewhat out. It's going to be thick. Utah better start hydrating last week because they're going to need all the extra fluids and they're going to need just to get through that part of the whole entire game. It's not even playing the Florida Gators. It's dealing with the elements. It's a different kind of heat than it is in Utah or the desert. Like, you have to get accustomed to it so you don't dehydrate. So getting past that, Dan Mullen ruined Florida football. He tried to be Urban Meyer. He tried to be Steve Spurrier and chuck it around, but did not develop depth and did not play his best players at times. He stuck with Emory Jones after Kyle Trask out of spite because he recruited Emory Jones, and that was a guy he was going to force it to make it work. Richardson was better. Everybody knew it. He just needed to actually get more time to focus on being the quarterback and not being the backup. Every time Emory Jones stepped on the field, it was less than superb. They also did not run the football. He wanted to be the guy who's going to throw it around the yard. I've heard enough chatter. I've seen it myself. Damian Pierce at Florida, when he was there, was a stud running back, was the best running back, and never got playing time until the bowl game versus UCF last year as consistently. So there are mistakes that Dan Mullen made that did not really use the talent at Florida the way it should be done. I think Billy Napier understands that and is not going to make that mistake again. He has won the Western Division in the Conference USA, well, in the Sun Belt, excuse me, at Louisiana 4 straight years. He went to Iowa State and beat Matt Campbell in Iowa State in 2020. He didn't have the flashy super 5 stars and 4 stars in those teams, but they were able to run the football, and play great defense. Billy Napier's coached under Saban. He's coached under a lot of head coaches in the league right now. He knows how to build a program. This is his one chance to shine. Florida, it's not going to be the Spurrier, fun and gun, chucking all around the yard. It's not going to be the high-flying offense of Urban Meyer. You are going to run the football, control it, and try to get a couple big chunk plays in the pass game. So don't expect the high-flying offense. Trust the process here. I'm saying this as a Georgia fan. Trust the process. Give them a couple of years to run the football and build up a tougher football team. That defense, they've been plagued by bad play calling, I think, and guys just not caring. They got a new voice in the room. They're always going to be talent in Florida to play. They landed a couple 4 stars the last day, stole them from Georgia and Alabama to come there and play defense for them. They built a pretty good recruiting class coming into 23 and 24, got momentum going. Give them time. They will be okay. Brenton Cox is running his mouth a little bit there in Florida, talking about how he's going to be leading the SEC in sacks and lead that defense and whatnot. I don't know how that's all going to pan out, but I do know he will be a difference maker and something that Cam Rising needs to pay attention to. Coming this Saturday, I think there's going to be a lot of early jitters from Florida because the team hasn't really got themselves filled out. It will take them a while to figure out who they are and get an identity. And the other side, Utah already has the identity. They know who they are. And actually, I think Florida needs to be like Utah. Run the football, use the tight ends, play great defense. You don't have to win 50-10. Winning 24-20 is a win. Utah will come into this football game with more experience, more pride, especially coming off that Rose Bowl and the Pac-12 title last year. They are going to come into this football game. They're going to run the ball at Florida, force it down their throat, and they're going to use their experience at quarterback and Tavion Thomas in the backfield to get themselves a gritty, big-time win. It's not going to be a high-scoring game. This game's going to be a nice little battle. I think it's probably going to be make you switch in between another game that's going on that night and this one on your TV because both late kickoffs. I'm seeing this more of a 27-21, 27-24 game. Defensive scores from both teams. I think there's going to be some turnovers, maybe the ball popping out, some fumbles. It will be a fun game. It'll be exciting, probably sloppy at times. Not really having preseason football games. We're going to know a lot about how Utah is built going forward, and we're going to learn a lot about what Billy Napier brings to Florida and if he has the team's attention. Richardson, I think, will have a couple jitters early on. He'll settle in late. But won't have enough juice in the end to get them a victory. I think Florida will play with a lot of emotion being at home versus Utah, but this game will not go their way. I think Utah finds a way to get it done. And like you said, I think this is a special team at Utah. Kyle Whittingham, that entire program is built on their own standard. And I think Florida's still trying to figure that out and get that back. They've lost that recently, and they need to re-identify their standard to get back to the elite. But Utah will take advantage and take care of business in the football game.
All right, Fresh. You ready to talk some Mountain Union Purple Raider football?
Of course, man. The fighting Pierre Garçons.
Yeah, now let's go to the game of the week we have there. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish traveling to Columbus. This was our top game this weekend. It's interesting here because these are 2 totally different teams going into this season. It's so fascinating because you have all of the name talent over there in Columbus. You have C.J. Stroud, you have Trayvon Henderson, JSN. You have some guys that are Marvin Harrison Jr., names that people are going to know very early on. And then you have Notre Dame, and a highly ranked Notre Dame team. But I would give most college football fans, name two players on Notre Dame. They might give you one, and they might give you two, but that's about it. There's not a whole lot of names over there at Notre Dame going into this season that people are really, really familiar with. You're going to get familiar with those teams here coming in. This is one of those games. If you're in Ohio, you're going to grab yourself some Dairy Dock ice cream. If you're over there in Vermilion, get ready, gear up for this game. Open up the windows, get that breeze off the lake, and buckle in. This is going to be a first look. The thing I'm watching most in this game, because there's a whole lot of stories coming into this matchup in Columbus. First off, Marcus Freeman, first real football game. I know he coached the bowl game versus Oklahoma State. This is the first real game he's coaching. Going back to Columbus, going back to the Horseshoe. What's that going to be like for him? But most importantly to me is, what does this Ohio State defense look like? You hired Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State last year. Jim Knowles had one of the top defenses in the country there. And Oklahoma State primarily was 3 and 4 star guys on their defense. Now you're loaded up with 4 and 5 star defensive players. What does he get? I know that they're saying this. I think the goal this season, Ohio State has to have a top 25 defense at least. It would be great if they were in the top 10. You can't do what you did last year. Ohio State's defense disappointed in big games. You didn't show up against Oregon. You didn't show up against Michigan. And even though you had an amazing offensive output in that Rose Bowl, you didn't show up in Pasadena either. That's my first big question there, Fresh. Are they able to show up? Are they able to really put the defensive boots? Because Notre Dame breaking in a new quarterback there. But just like we've said all episode long, Notre Dame maybe has the best offensive line in the country. They might possibly have the best offensive line. They're returning all 5 starters as well. I know that their center is a little bit banged up. It is looking like he's going to play in this game. The quarterback's best friend, a veteran offensive line, and one heck of a tight end in Michael Mayer. If Ohio State can't do it defensively, this could be a very tight game. This could be a long night going late into the fourth quarter. Notre Dame, you're going to try to take long drives down the field. You're going to try to control the clock. Wind it down, shorten the game a little bit. Ohio State, you are not going to try to do that. It's going to be quick, fast, and in a hurry. Offense, they want quick strikes, and they're going to pound the football. Fresh, what are you seeing?
You know, this kind of has the same kind of feel of the Georgia-Clemson opener last year, where you have one team who has come close but hasn't broken through recently, and the other team who has been pretty successful but breaking in a new quarterback, but a lot of expectations for both teams going in. And you kind of worry, are both teams going to play a little tight? You know, it's college football. You don't have preseason games. You're just going against each other in practice. And yeah, you want to go physical, but you don't want to injure each other, knock out a star player, and have them, dinged up. You want to get through and get the right work in, but you don't want to destroy yourself at the same time. I think this football game early on is going to be slow. I think both teams are going to try to figure each other out, what they're trying to do, and it will open up as it goes. Looking at Notre Dame, there's 5 offensive linemen. You go on the road. Things you want to bring with you on the road, a running game and a defense. They're bringing a running game. Great tight end Michael Mayer. You're starting basically a brand new quarterback. Brand new running backs are coming in. Your top receiver, unfortunately tore his knee up in practice a couple weeks ago, so he's not playing. Offensively, Notre Dame is going to be unknown and limited. They're gonna have to maximize opportunities, rely on field position, and make it and try to force Ohio State into mistakes and to shorten the field. That's how they're gonna have to do it. Now the Notre Dame defense, you got an All-American defensive lineman there. They always bring in great linebackers. You got J.B. Bertrand and Brandon Joseph at safety. You got some veteran corners, and Freeman being a defensive guy. This is his second year with the majority of his players in that defense. Really got them to gel. They kind of know how he thinks. He knows how they think. That's going to be a big attribute using the entire season to really kind of focus in this one. Now, if you do remember, middle of the summer, he kind of joked and said the education at Ohio State isn't that great. You're a Buckeye, might not want to poke the bear. It's going to be interesting to see how he gets his team and what his model, what he wants to do. I think it's going to be very similar to what Fickle has at Cincinnati. Run the football, use your mobility, short passes, intermediate passes, keep the offense churning, time possession, and play stingy defense. You're going to have to maintain that, but you cannot make mistakes, especially versus Ohio State, because that offense is lethal. If you get down by 14, I don't know if Notre Dame can make a comeback. Last year in the bowl game, they built a huge lead on a Jim Knowles defense. But in the second half, Jim Knowles' defense locked it down and allowed Oklahoma State to come back and win the football game. Does they have the firepower if they do get in a shootout? Utah, they had a great defense in that bowl game, the Rose Bowl, but eventually that offense for Ohio State, they just churned too many points, and the defense did enough in the second half to lock it down. You cannot get far behind against this Ohio State offense. This team is focused. This team is angry after last year. You see that team up north in Michigan beating them in that game, go winning the Big Ten, like that right there, that's offensive. That's unacceptable for Buckeye standards. And so C.J. Stroud, Trayvon Henderson, and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., the rest of that offense, this is a chance for them to really show, are they the real deal? And a springboard, potentially a really special season there in Columbus. I think it starts slow, like I mentioned before, but as the game wears on, I think Ohio State will find their groove, and they will just get enough plays, enough chinks in the armor to eventually wear down Notre Dame. Notre Dame is going to be in it all year. I actually think that they are a very, very good football team, and they will get better as the year goes on. But this game, I think Ohio State is more game ready for week one. Being at home, I'm thinking like a 34-20, 34-17 Buckeye win. I'm really sorry to say that, Lance. I know our big buddy from Notre Dame fans going to the game. I just got to call it like I see it in this one. I think that Ohio State will wear it down. They have enough playmakers on the outside. This game they will prevail 34-17.
Yeah, looking at this, I'm having a hard time seeing Notre Dame score more than 31 points. And that was the number I circled. I said, in order for Notre Dame to win this game, I don't know how they're going to hold the Buckeyes under 31 points, but that's what they would have to do. And they themselves would have to get to that 31 number. Early on, I think Ohio State's going to pound the ball with Henderson. I think what you got to do is you got to get Notre Dame to bring extra help into the box. If they bring extra help into the box, Jackson Smith and the Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Julian Fleming, Emeka Abuka, Caleb Burton, all of those receivers right there. Brian Hartline has done a phenomenal job recruiting stud wide receivers at Ohio State. You bring that extra help, they're going to beat you deep. One of those guys is going to get loose. That's the scary thing with Ohio State this year. Where are you able to stop them? Like, they're going to have to beat themselves. They're going to have to turn the ball over. They're going to have to CJ Stroud's going to have to be inaccurate with his passes for them to lose a game like this here. I'm seeing Ohio State winning this game. I think you're right there. I think that it's going to wind up being a game that's going to be kind of close going into the third. But I think coming about midway through the third quarter, you're going to start seeing that Buckeye offense really start clicking and rolling there. I don't see I think Ohio State's going to be trying to put 45 to 50 points on a team every single week. And I think they have the talent to do that. The question is going to be that defense. Jack Sawyer, Zach Harrison. Both of you guys have been around this Buckeye program. Zach Harrison's a senior. Jack Sawyer, sophomore over there. Ohio State has had great pass rushers in its history. Okay, Larry Johnson is the defensive line coach over there. Started over there at Penn State. Coached up a bunch of great names over there at Penn State. Came to Ohio State. Bosa brothers. Chase Young. All sorts of guys. The kid that's over in Cincinnati, that I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head. Hubbard.
Hubbard.
You look at all these ends that came out of Ohio State, and they didn't have that this past year. Now it's time to see the Buckeyes really develop that defense. Denzel Burke and Ronnie Hickman in the back end. Excited to see them as well there. There's also freshman Sonny Styles. I'd be interested to see if he gets on the field in this game. Looking out for him. I got the Buckeyes winning big. I got Ohio State 45, Notre Dame, I'm going to say 28. I think Ohio State's going to eventually run away with this game. Like I said, it'll be late in the third quarter, but Ohio State's really going to be an offensive juggernaut there. I think that, like I said, get yourself some Dairy Dock ice cream. Say hello to big Buckeye fan Tom down there over there at Dairy Dock and Romps. But this is an exciting game for the Buckeyes. It's a marquee game. All eyeballs are going to be on Columbus. You need to show up. This can't be another game like Oregon. This can't be like Michigan. This can't be like the Rose Bowl. You need to really announce yourself and leave no doubt. I feel like I'm quoting "Remember the Titans" here. You cannot give people reasons to pick apart your team to start this year. This is a huge story game.
Well, one thing, we started talking about these big expectations. The committee is going to watch this game, and they're going to remember this game if it comes down to fine points. Now, if it comes down to are they the 1 seed or the 2 or the 3 or the 4, if they were fortunate to make a playoff, you look at these kind of games and sort of use that as a justification or a value point. You can't mess up. You can't unless it's just clear you're clearly undefeated and you've dominated everybody, you've earned the number 1. You don't want to leave it for chance where you're a 2 or a 4 or a 3 or whatever that might come down in that top 4 playoff seeding. You want to come out here and make a statement and sort of supplant yourself as a concrete number 1 in the country. Alabama, they're going to have Texas in week 2. I don't even know that's that. It's not even really, that's more of a name than it really is, ranking. But you still have a chance to stake your claim to that hierarchy by having a dominant winner versus a top 5 team. Another thing is, there's a lot of bashing on Notre Dame. Are they? People are saying are they a top 5 team? Them being in top 5 in the AP is a joke and blah 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 this and blah 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 that. If it is, we'll find out. If it's not, and they compete and they make this a football game and a full 60-minute fight, then maybe people got it right and they know what they're talking about. But you know what? We've all talked about it. It's kind of why we made a mockery of our own preseason polls. They really mean nothing because there's so many transfers and so many guys getting hurt and guys, playing and who knows what's going on. And you really can't tell. You're basing everything off an assumption off of last year. There's no real body of work until they step on the field. And that's the coolest thing about week 1 is you're going to know something, but we're not going to know the full story about week 1. We're not going to know after week 2 or week 3. The story that keeps building and keeps planning and adding a chapter. I really think Ohio State's going to come out and make a statement. And if they don't, they're going to have questions to have answered of, are you ready for the moment? Are you ready for the spotlight?
But you know what, Fresh? We're back to playing football, man. It's time to hit. I love it. So, well, folks, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you go into spinnablesports.com. Yes, that is spinnablesports.com. We have all sorts of previews out there. We're going to be dropping some stuff in and out all season long. So make sure that you are visiting spinnablesports.com to get all of your sport needs. Make sure you're liking and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts from, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Pods, Good Pods, whatever pods. See, I don't know them all, but I know wherever you get your podcast from, like, subscribe, leave us that 5-star review because Fresh and I were those 5-star prospects. Also, like us on the YouTube. If you're watching these faces that were made for radio, make sure you're liking and subscribing to us and following us on Twitter. At the end of this week, we are going to be putting out a poll all season long. Every single week, Fresh and I are going to pick 1 or 2 games each week, and then we're going to put out a poll and let the fans decide. We have 15,000 followers right now. We're trying to get to 25,000. Make sure you're following us there. But vote in our polls. Help determine what's going to be the next game that we talk about. We're going to be jumping on there. Interact with us. Talk to us. We love interaction over there. It's absolutely great. So make sure that we're following along all season long, and it's just going to be an exciting time. I'm pumped up.
Can't wait. Ready to go. Hit spinnablesports.com. Got conference previews for every conference. Group of 5, Power 5, they're all there. Check it out. Can't wait to talk to you guys all year. Man, I can't wait for week 1. Let's go. Let's go.
All right. Have a good night, all.
Bye, y'all.